What's up, everyone? Coach Rob here. We're live. Today is the first of many to come of what we call our FLO Talks. So I have a lot of relationships throughout the industry, and I want to bring those resources forth to our community so that we can really tap into some of the expertise of my friends out there and kind of hear what they're doing throughout all of this. As you know, the Corona storm hit, and we've all been drawn to what we call social distancing. Really, it's physical distancing, but on the social side, I would say that we're more engaged than ever through technology and media. So today I've got a good friend, a guy I really look up to in the industry. He's kind of a jack of all trades. He started as a fighter and has worked his way up through. Has worked for UFC gyms as their global trainer. He was also the WEC lightweight champion, and I'll tell you that these era of videos and fighting were most of my favorite back in the Pride and WEC days. So I'm going to start with a quick little clip, and we're going to welcome Razor Rob Mccullough today. Little action on Razor Rob here. Give it a second. Little throwback video for us here. Really excited to have this guy on today. Again, I spent a week with him down in Huntington this last year working with UFC gyms, and really took a liking to him. Felt the guy was humble, down to earth, and knew his shit on top of that. So really excited to have this guy on today. Without further ado, let's welcome Razor Rob here. Let me close this out. Pull Rob up on the monitor. What's happening, man?
What's up, man? How you doing?
Everyone, welcome Razor Rob. Let's let's start off with a little bit of just general stuff. Let's talk. Give us a little bit about your background. Obviously, I opened it up a little bit, so. Tell us a little bit about kind of how you started, where you come from, and where you're at now, and we'll get deeper into the next half hour of where we're really at right now. So, turn it over to you.
Let's see. Well, I started in Huntington Beach, California, 1994. I went into an LA boxing in Costa Mesa, California, as a guy with my buddy. I was living on my friends' couches all through high school. And he said, bro, let's go check out this spot. They got weights. So I went to go lift weights with them. Realized there was a bag cage. They were doing classes. And the guy wrapped my hands. And I remember going, dude, these smell disgusting. He's like, yeah, don't worry about it. Put on some loader gloves, jumped into a class, hit some bags. And the guy walked around and said, hey, man, you got a good kick. Boom. Like that. Positive feedback just planted the seed. And I just kind of kept it going. And, here and there, I'd get it watered by people, and I always look back at that feedback as, man, that helped me really grow and putting myself in an environment and trying to make the opportunities. And people are like, oh, you're really lucky. It's like, well, I think I made a lot of things where they could have just been like, well, I made that an opportunity. So enjoyed it. I was a kickboxing coach. Then I started selling gym memberships for the guys, because nobody wanted to open Saturday mornings. So they're like, hey, you get a percentage of the membership if you sell it. And I was like, sure. I live at my friend's house, so this is all money in the bank for me. I started teaching Saturday morning. A guy came in with his son, and I remember his son was all like wearing this loped out with bandana, and I was like, this guy. And he was like, hey, you got any sparring? And it was a Saturday. No one was at the gym, and I said they weren't even members, which was the best part. And I said, how much is your kid weigh? He's like 145 or something. I said, I'll spar him. And so I had to sign waivers. He asked, mind you, this is the 90s. He said, can I set up a VHS, like a camcorder? Can I put that up? And I said, sure. So he pulled out his big tripod. The thing was huge, right? Nowadays, right, all this stuff done on our phones.
Yeah.
And he videotaped us sparring. And I remember thinking, the guy's name was Freddie Madrano, too. I love that guy.
Mm-hmm.
He got this thing started, opened that door for me. His dad ended up getting me fights and stuff, which was really cool. But we moved around and we got done. He pulled out his belt out of 6K California State kickboxing champion. And I went, whoa, that's your belt? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, man. And mind you, I realized the guy was toying with me because I was trying to drop bombs and he was like using footwork and using a jab, the inside leg, and I couldn't really establish anything because I was just kind of hucking him. But I just remember that was a lot of fun. And then when I realized the guy was a champ, I was like, whoa, dude, that was cool. Yeah, his dad asked me if I wanted to fight, if I was interested. I said, yeah. And I mean, he got me literally one smoker fight with headgear and shin pads. And I fought, I won, I had a lot of fun. And he said, what'd you think? And I said, that was really fun. And he goes, want another fight? And I said, yeah. I had one smoker fight. And then my next fight, didn't have a coach either. I was just teaching at LA Boxing and selling memberships. The next fight I fought, it was in January of 1997. And I fought one of Master Toddy's guys at the Four Queens on Fremont Street. So
Yep.
One smoker fight. And I knocked the guy out. And I remember going, dude, I got $100. And right before I walked out, all my buddies that drove to Las Vegas, because it was in Vegas, they all drove, and as I was walking down to get into the ring, I saw them walking into the ballroom at the Four Queens, and I remember looking at them, and I just winked at them, and I just felt like, yo, I belong here. And I wasn't scared. I had the picture of the second I walked out, and I had the biggest smile on my face. And I just remember, like, how much fun it was, and they were going to pay me. I got a hotel room.
Heck yeah.
And I'm not going to get in trouble because I get a fight. But I was always a coach, right? I was a coach before I actually really ever started fighting. So, I mean, I'm a student till this day. So that's really how I got started. Fast forward, opened a gym with my best friend in 99. We still have that gym in Huntington Beach, California. I went back because, we have partners in the business. Everyone's got hands in the pot. Right now I got a lot bigger overhead in California. I got a home, I'm married, I got children. So I went back to LA Boxing as a franchise company as the director of instructor training in 2011. I was trying to do the jack of all trades master plan where I was a fight still, but I was still going to be this corporate guy. And the realization was, hey, I don't want to be the jack of all trades master plan. I want to be really good at what I'm going to do. So am I going back for a run at the belt? Mind you, I had won 12 different titles between Muay Thai and MMA. No holds barred. So at this point, I said, hey, I got little kids, I got a mortgage, I got real big boy problems now. Like, let's make sure I can set up my family up for the success in the future. So I put the fighting thing to the side. With the economy and everything else, when I purchased my home in Huntington Beach, that was kind of one of the goals I had set. I realized, wow, I was on a negatively amortized fixed arm loan. And it sounds like I just spoke some Chinese. Basically, that movie, The Big Short, if you know it.
Yeah.
Watch that movie.
Yeah.
I bought a subprime loan home, and it went like this.
Crash.
So the next year was worth half of what I paid for it, and the mortgage was going up. None of it was going towards the principal. It was all interest. So I was like, okay, this doesn't seem good. I'm not the sharpest dude. I teach kickboxing and I fight for fun. How am I making my money make money for me? What's my asset and liability column? Because I read that book, Rich Dad Poor Dad, so I started thinking about that. Kind of got that going. LA Boxing was fun. They paid for my education. I worked with Nesta. I'm becoming a certified personal trainer. I started working for the American Red Cross to teach CPR first aid. And then 2013, UFC Gym acquired LA Boxing. And right before the guy who had hired me, who went on to still open his own brand called Exponential, it's got a bunch of other entities under it, he said, hey man, these dudes, it's cool that you got belts and you got titles. This is UFC. They have any fighter they want to be that guy. They're a fitness company though. Half of them is owned by NEV. So you should get some certifications. And I was like, okay. And I wasn't like the sharpest dude, not like the most studious, but I think I really sold myself short, to be totally honest. No pun intended, because I'm flat.
Hey, I'm shorter than that, so.
I ended up getting into the National Academy of Sports Medicine through people from the UFC gym who kind of hooked that all up for me and said, hey, if you'd like this opportunity to do this online training and check out this part, and anytime I had an opportunity to pick up some education or someone, and I still attend seminars and courses as much as I can. If anybody ever quotes a book and I respect that person's, which, dude, anybody at this day, I'll write that book down and I text my wife, get this book. She's like, babe, got like a bunch of books. And I'm like, yeah, I know, but this is good. So at one point, I told my wife, hey, stop doing it. If I tell you that, tell me no. And she's like, hey, you told me to say no. All right, after this one. So anyways, long story short, I was traveling the country for LA Boxing. UFC gym purchased it. I was traveling the country for a UFC gym. When I say country, like domestically. And then it went international. And I was living out of a suitcase, which I've been to every continent except for Antarctica, because apparently penguins don't like to work out. But, and I hadn't hit Africa. But other than that, I've been on every continent. I've got to enjoy and share and learn and get a roll with guys who are really good and go, wow, this is so much fun. And go, hey, here's how I made a living. Here's my friends and I have done some stuff. Sharing part was the most fun, but with this COVID thing, it's put our whole industry on a freeze, right? So currently I'm at home, but I'm creating content out of my garage, out of our gym still. I'm really, really enjoying the time with my family. I have 2 little boys. I'm married. I got a hot wife who just hangs out. Now she's like currently on a
yeah. What's up, little man? How are we? Yeah.
So I'm enjoying the time. This is a blessing in disguise for me.
Yeah.
And I get to talk to cool dudes like you.
Appreciate that, man.
Pretty much. Since then, I got NASM, certified personal trainer, mixed martial arts conditioning specialist, youth exercise specialist, a fitness nutrition specialist, and I'm about to do, when we get off of this, finish my certified nutrition coach, which is really good. It's a brand new course from NASM done online. So I love doing this stuff. I love being able to try to challenge myself. I realized it took me a long time, but I'm a messed up dude. I really like to be challenged.
Yeah.
Where that could be good, but then again, if you're not careful and you create a challenge that's not a healthy one, that can also be bad.
Yeah.
So I just want to make sure that I'm trying to do some inner thoughts and thinking and some turn that down, bro, please. Thank you. My son's trying to watch cartoon.
That's pretty much the story of this thing. Is my wife and I are both actively putting up online videos, and we just left the studio. My wife had to record 2 different videos today. Everything's live and on the fly, so hopefully you guys can all hear this. Give us a thumbs up if I'm gonna check in on this real fast, make sure we're good. We're doing the double loop today, being on Zoom and being on Facebook Live versus the easy route we could have gone on Instagram. But our community, when the stuff hit the fan, we went to Facebook Live right away, and started putting out free content and for our community to support. And we've had a great following of it, so we wanted to really stay on that platform today. But really excited to get into this. Just a little bit about me for your people on the call. I've pursued a life of fitness and martial arts. For me, it started Taekwondo, really young age, and wrestling right after. And I played 1 season of basketball and made 1 basket in the wrong hoop. So we realized real quick, and I got in a fight, and I think I was 5. So they realized that martial arts would keep my soul contained, and it did just that. Pursued it all the way up through college wrestling, and went to school to be a teacher. And but I enlisted in the Army Reserves at 17, and at that time I got my ACE certification and became my Army PT master, and that's when my real coaching path kind of started at a really young age. And then through college, got a couple of little jobs, odds and ends, cleaning the gyms, and cash under the table, and realized after a bunch of injuries and through the physical therapy work how much I really loved the training aspect, and it was almost self-destruct mode. I kind of enjoyed the physical therapy in a twisted kind of way. I was seeing that return out of it all, and that's what inspired me. And fast forward 25 years later, and I'm still doing the same thing. Have turned different phases of. I moved into bodybuilding after all my wrestling injuries and had to leave martial arts entirely. Had multiple knee surgeries that really ended my collegiate career. and pursued the life of the personal trainer, and went full on in the whole Globo gym world, and did what we all sought out to do at that time in the big gyms, which was get like super tanned and super yoked out, and and did.
I'm still on that, bro.
Yeah, he's still on that one, huh? I'll tell you, there are times where I get this little itch, and I'm like, man, the Throwback Thursdays, you bring out some of the reminders, and but they're also the reminders of how much that went into that, and I met my wife, and we pursued more of a functional life, dove into CrossFit, opened a couple of CrossFit affiliates, worked for CrossFit headquarters as subject material expert on the strongman certification. So got into heavily into strongman competition, traveled the country, teaching certifications pretty much every weekend for about 4 years, while we had 2 CrossFit affiliates, one in Scottsdale and one in Tempe. It was just like full steam forward. Didn't really realize the amount of stress I was under. It was just the pace I took. I was about 230 pounds, was, lifting crazy heavy, and training to compete national and world level in both strongman and powerlifting, and ended up with I was teaching a seminar and had this little breakout on my face, this little like pimple on my forehead, and it started like raising up, and next thing you know, got home that night, it was super inflamed, and found out I had shingles on my face. And that was like big eye opener for me. My immune system was run down, it was through the stress, and really started pursuing more of a life of health in front of fitness versus that quest of compulsive fitness, which I think as an athlete, we tend to find this place of being compulsive with accomplishments versus harmonic in our relationship with ourselves, number one, and number two, this relationship with food and fitness and how this works. And that was really the turning point for me, that I had to really start looking at. It was like my first big boy kind of scare, and had to really start looking at some of the things I was doing. And you mentioned the short word earlier at 5'6" and 230 pounds. And at my heaviest in bodybuilding, I reached 260 pounds at my top point. On this frame, it's not exactly the internal health that you're looking for long term. So my wife, she was following this intermittent fasting thing, and this was like, I don't know, almost 8 years ago now. And I thought she was crazy, and this starvation diet. And she started playing some podcasts for me relating to the benefits of intermittent fasting and boosting immune system and such. So really followed that path. Ultimately led me into yoga and some of these other pieces. Yoga gave me the ability to move again, and that ability to move, along with dropping the weight, got me back into martial arts and jiu-jitsu. And now I'm 4 years in. I'm a purple belt under Fabiano Scherner, and have a couple schools up here in Oregon, along with other fitness modalities combined. Also chief development officer for a chain of health clubs at the moment. So kind of developing some branding and content. And so that's my history. So talk to me a little bit about, I've been bounced around these different places, but even though I was away from martial arts for a while, I've always kind of defined myself at the core as a martial artist. Even with some of my time away, I was able to really follow, and that's when, I used to watch all your fights, and was a big fan back in the day. So, I want to turn it back onto some of that stuff. Like, here's the reality. I want to talk, because we have a lot of martial artists on this call today, and talk to me a little bit about the turning point for you as an athlete when you realized, these are the hard conversations, right? As an athlete, when you realize that it's time to start, taking that other route. You mentioned that you went through with, building your education as a trainer and all of these pieces to support yourself as a martial artist. But you see so many talented martial artists out there right now that that's all they want to do. They want to coach and they want to teach martial arts. But how many martial arts classes can you teach a day? And maybe it's privates, but where are you starting and being able to fill with other specialties? Talk to me a little bit about, kind of how you transitioned out of fighting into your career and where you're at and how that went down.
Yeah, like I said, I started as a member in essentially like a conditioning bag class, right? The gym, LA Boxing at the time, had weights and had some cardio machines. It was in a pretty seedy little park of town right next to the freeway. They ended up eventually franchising across the United States. They got to about 84 franchises. The cool thing about it was being that member and being a kid who, like I said, I lived on my own all through high school. So I lived with my friends. Mm-hmm. So I didn't have rich parents. I didn't have that. Well, I was bought in. I was 100% bought in. And until this day, I realized that I have to go to the gym because it makes me feel a little bit normal. It makes me have fun. I get out the stress, and when I'm done, I'm like, all I want to do is eat and get something to drink and go to bed, right? And now I can share that with my family, and literally during a time like this, no thanks, buddy. During a time like this, I'm still be able to train my students. And I have students I've been training for over 16 years. So, I mean, where a lot of people might be shut down, this is an essential service. I'm working on helping them through fitness, and that's really what it is. Like you said, you can only teach so many martial art classes, and the ones who would come to me and say, "Man, I really want to fight," I'm like, "Oh yeah, well, what have you done so far?" "Well, I watch UFC, and I'm like, oh, okay, cool." Like the commitment it takes, you got to be a weird person, straight up, to want to punch other people in the face or choke other people for right. I'm gonna make a living doing that. Hey, you want to do it for fun? Do it for fun. Do it because it's gonna get you in good shape. And that's a lot of the people that I've dealt with don't want to fight, just want to get in really good shape. And sometimes you get a diamond in the rough. I've had 4 people that I've taken from 0 experience to championship levels. And to me, I know the commitment that I needed and that I would want as from a coach. I don't want to do that with fighters. I really enjoy training regular people. Here's the protocol, here's the stuff that we do to train like a fighter, and you're going to get in good shape. You're going to get really good shape. You're going to get fight shape, but you don't have to actually punch people in the face.
Or get punched in the face.
There's some that are going to want to go there, which is cool. And there's some that are going to want to choke each other with their clothes.
Yeah.
To me, I found that that's fun. We used to make fun about, dude, it's jiu-jitsu, that's cute. But now I'm like, wow, hey, everyone's got, you're walking around, everyone's got handles on.
Yeah.
And now I'm a dad, both of my sons started when they were 3. We got a 10-year-old and a 5-year-old, so they both train, and that's our little bonding experience. And to me, it's the best thing to be able to pick up some stuff, work here with my kids, and then hey, I can add that to a training session. The next thing you know, I'm getting paid to learn stuff, and that to me has been a lot of fun. But the one thing we can't forget is this is our vehicle, right? Our bodies are our vehicle to martial arts, and then what you got up here. So the cool thing is, hey, I just keep trying to add extra modalities, more education to what we can offer from the physical fitness part of it, and then that kind of transcends to going into where do you want to take the martial arts part? You want to do MMA? You want to do wrestling? You want to do jiu-jitsu? You want to do Muay Thai? So that's been really a lot of fun, and that's kind of the hot buzzword nowadays. Is people have realized, hey, if I want to train, what's the best thing that I can do in a shorter amount of time? Tax all my energy systems, hit all 3 planes of motion, work on mobility, work on this part up here is so empowering. Most people don't understand that. That energy systems I'm sure you're using, or we're gonna hit all 3. They're not thinking about that. But if you have a good coach, they're programming it for you. So you can get an amazing workout in a very short amount of time doing mixed martial arts, or getting on a suspension trainer, picking up some kettlebells, or spinning a Bulgarian bag. If you have a coach and they know what they're doing, they care, dude, look at it. Like, people that are fit right now we're all kind of like, oh, yeah, I get it. The mask thing, really? But
Yeah.
all the people that aren't in shape are running around scared with masks on in their cars, going, oh God, I hope I don't get it. And we're like, that's
Yeah.
good, but I know I'm in pretty good shape, so.
Yeah, there's definitely a position right now, kind of two spots of this proactive, healthy mindset and the reactive fear mongering that's happening right now. And I'll tell you again, we talked a couple weeks ago, and that night I ended up getting sick. And sometimes the people that may on the outside look the most physically fit have challenges of their own, and just because you're low body fat percentage or some of these, physically, looking that way, doesn't necessarily mean you are that. But at the same time, you've got to put the work in. And for me, I deal with some immune system stuff. I got sick as a kid, and the last couple of years, as I mentioned earlier on in the call, last couple of years I've really focused on my diet, but overtraining can run you down as well, and I believe that getting sick a couple weeks ago came because I recorded 2 really hard workouts the day before. That morning I recorded 2 hard workouts again, so I trained 2 hours that morning, fasted, and did a call in the afternoon, and by the time I got home, I broke out. So I think there's something to be said right now about governing your paces as well. I think everybody wants to go into this quarantine cave and try to come out like some beast, but I would say, right now, I think just steady, consistent paces, and putting in the effort when you need to. If you need that 20-minute slam, and I put one in today, I needed it. I needed my fix. I'm not getting my jiu-jitsu, and I'm not getting these pieces, so I like that high intensity. But the reality is, I almost feel like right now, with everything going on, following a bit of a path of taking it not easy, but slower, steadier, may not be a bad idea either. I think going full tilt every single day and not listening to your body may not be the wisest. So there's definitely a balance in all of this right now, for sure. Real quick, I want to dive into, we don't have a ton of time, but I want to dive a little bit into some nutrition talk, a little bit about kind of what you do, and talk to me, being you probably have some injuries and your body's probably beat up through the years. So what do you do now to manage your pain and inflammation and your health and immunity, and some of the tips in nutrition?
It's funny because I always boast, like, hey, I got out of the fight game, and at a point where I did Muay Thai first, and I did some amateur boxing. I mean, I wrestled when I was in 6th grade, and I wasn't very good. I did karate when I was like 9. But I broke my hand twice, right? I had, last time I broke the 4th and the 5th metacarpal, and I had to get surgery. That's my only surgery I've ever had. But put me on the shelf, and when you have momentum of beating people up, and you're like, yeah, this camp's going well. Now I'm not going into technique stuff or conditioning. I'm just adding extra cool stuff. All of a sudden, right? And then Western medicine, what do we do? Hey, let's just stuff this guy with a bunch of painkillers. But not a good idea for any athlete, because you end up finding that dopamine fix you get from the thrill of winning and training. And hey, I'm going to take a couple of these and call it a day. So obviously I don't do that. I found CBD has been really beneficial, and I've been busting, dude. I've been doing a lot of privates since this whole thing started. Our whole company's on furlough, so I haven't gone to my office. It's like sitting around, and I'm like, all right, cool, dude. Like, hey, we need to get some training in. Let's go. Where are we starting? Where are we going? So my shoulder's been kind of bugging me, which is kind of weird. And so I'm like, hey, dude, I got like tinctures, right? Which I just like to call them drops, right?
Yeah.
Drops, but they call them tinctures, whatever. I've been using those ones. I got to hook up with a company called OC Farm, OCFarmstore.com. Actually, it's
OCFarmstore.com.
OCFarmstore.com, and you can use my discount code RAZOR10. That way, you guys can get a discount on tinctures, and they got some gummies and stuff. But dude, I get up in the morning and I'm like, oh, like I'll roll over. First, I thought it was because I was sneaking my hand into my wife when I'd sleep, and she'd sleep on it, but she's tiny. So I'm like, I don't know if it's that. And I realized, like, I'm holding tie pads and focus weights and then grappling with people and going, here's how you do an underhook. And they're trying to, like, twist my arm off. I'm like, dude.
People don't realize the amount of injury that you can, take on through holding pads. If you're somebody that holds pads every single day, and the impact that comes from it, and we've got a boxing coach that works for us that's got complete spinal fusions now, and he was a high level boxer himself, but he attributes most of the damage to holding pads, and there's definitely a art and a science to that. You see. So many trainers that just jump in and they're, slamming, and I watch the neck and the shoulders jarring, and it's like anything else. It's a trained skill, that you got to know how to hold those pads or you get beat up,
Definitely.
Yeah.
But I think Maximus, stop touching stuff, bro. Please. I'm gonna have to cry choking.
I love the live videos. It's half of the time my daughter's jumping in, and I went to the gym today just to get some quiet space because I knew, it's like, but this is the reality of where we're all at right now. It's live, it's candid, it's we're all out of our homes, and you're seeing everybody's living rooms, and I like that. I think it keeps it more authentic and genuine. And I think we're able to see right now those who know their stuff and they put it out there, and I hate to say it, but some of them that do not and are trying to get out and do this whole online training thing, and it's not working for them because maybe they didn't have it to begin with, but it's interesting to see the amount of content and some of the amazing resources that are coming online right now, even through the jiu-jitsu world, BJJ fanatics throwing up constant, free videos and tutorials, and it's cool to see how much our, global communities have come together to support through all of this, so talk to me a little bit about lifestyle when you were training, and lifestyle now. What are some of the differences? And I know you've already tossed around some of it, sleeping on people's couches, and I think everybody goes into this and they look at like the fighters, or they look at gym owners, and some of these people as, man, they've got it made, they've got the lifestyle or whatever, but what's the real grind behind it, So talk to us a little bit about, some of the activity during your fight career and what it looks like now.
So my buddy and I started a gym in 1999. We currently still have that gym. It's still successful. We dropped a huge UFC gym right next to it, literally 0.3 miles from it, and we still charge double than what UFC gym charges. And we still have all of our active members from like literally 16 years.
Wow.
So it's been a ride, and you definitely don't get in the gym industry because you're like, I'm gonna make a bunch of money.
Right.
You do it because you're like, hey, I'm a student, this is a lot of fun, and I'd be cool to be able to wear shorts to work. You're definitely not doing it because you're like, hey, I'm going to be a baller, I want to drive a Ferrari.
Yeah.
You do it because you're like, hey, I love this, and the one, it was really interesting, and I still remember to this day when I had this turning point. I'm a master trainer for Trigger Point Performance Therapy. So they're like, hey, we'd like you to come do an autograph. Like, actually, they asked me to go to Idea Fit, right, which is basically for personal trainer, like group fitness instructors. And I said, oh, so they didn't say autograph. They said, we'd like you to come check it out. So I said, yeah, this is what I charge. I think they thought I was kidding. And I was like, no, I show up to do events and stuff. I charge for that. And they're like, okay, well, we'll see if you have a budget. I was like, okay, cool. You asked me to do something else. Yeah, I'd love to do it. So I went there, and I think what they thought was I was going to sell stuff for them, which was cool. But then I told them, hey, make some 8x10s, I'll sign and stuff, put on a master trainer. So I showed up, they said, here's your box. But the place was packed. It was in Anaheim, and they're selling stuff, right? They're selling foam rollers, self-off fashion release tools, foam rollers, and they do percussion therapy now too. Hyperice also does percussion therapy, and I love their products.
Yeah.
So this was before that though. They had the ball, they had the grid, they had this other stick. I'm sitting there, and the box is open, and this lady walks in, and it was packed. And the lady goes, "Are you a master trainer?" And I was like, "Well, yeah. What's up? Hey, you want a picture?" And she like didn't even thought I was kidding. She honestly thought I was kidding. She goes, "This is bugging me." And she like points, and I go, "Oh, do you run a lot?" And she's like, "Yeah." "Oh, hey, here, sit down." I got it right, and I was like, "Here, roll this part out." And she's like, "Yeah, it's not right there." And I said, No. I get it though, but it's not always necessarily the spot that's really bugging you. That's the one that has the issue. We can be able to connect this stuff around it. Let's start at your foot. We went all the way up. We hit our TFL, and she's like, "Oh, it feels better." So I did like the adjustment from one foot to the other, and she goes, "Thanks. Can I get one of these?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then I see I did another one. I did another one. I never actually even signed the thing. A picture. I was wow, this is a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
I got to help people that I didn't know, but we're all weirdos that like to work out all the time. We're wearing sweaty gym clothes half the time. And I was like, wow, this is super cool. Well, and I thought, wow, I tore a ligament in my leg in a fight. I won the fight, by the way. But I tore that, and I thought back, you know what, probably I should have been doing. The tissue in my leg obviously wasn't. I should have been foam rolling. I should have been more hydrated, cutting weight before fight, but it kind of sucks. So, man, I wish I would have done that. How much longer my career would have been.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't like I was upset, but I was thinking, God, there's so much knowledge that we can share, and I'm going to share it with my kids. That's why I really do this stuff on work. I'm going to share it with students, right? So to me, that was an interesting turning point. Was, hey, I can do this, and I can help people. Like, I'm a dad, but I'm also a coach, and those are kind of, to me, the same, symbiotic. Being able to pick some stuff up, and then, and guess what? I ain't going to do it for free, though. So I got bills I got to pay, I got mouths I got to feed. So I'll pick some stuff up, I'll put it in here, and then let me figure out how I'm going to help you. And by the way, this is what it goes for. I had a guy hit me up today. He goes, "Hey, man, could you train my kid?" And I said, "Dude, I would love to, but I don't want to take your money, bro." And he's like, "Oh, man, you're a super good coach. You trained with me a long time." And I said, "Yeah, dude, but I'm not going to get your son any faster and stronger. I'm not going to build a really good foundation on blood training. Like, you have to get a session, and we'd have to get through like a whole program before we actually start building up." I had to give him a movement assessment. So I said, "Bro, they make me group classes," and I said, "I don't really tend to do group classes nowadays, but get him in wherever we're going to fall on this after this whole thing goes." And he was like, "Thanks, dude. I really appreciate that. You're not trying to take my money." And I said, "I'm not in this to try to take people's money.
Yeah.
I want to help you." So that was kind of my little turning point on that one.
Yeah. I worked with Trigger Point a little bit on, we had some events in our CrossFit era, and they were really great to work with. We put on a couple events, and man, they shipped out just boxes and boxes of product, and at the end of it, they're like, just keep it, and man, I've used the Trigger Point products for years now, and really happy. I've got even the frozen, like the steel frozen ones. Those things are awesome, man. So really like some of those products, although it got a little rusty in the freezer, which was, you think about that, right?
As far as I had one of those, and I was like, okay, cool. It's been in my freezer for literally years, and at one point I told my wife, I go, "Man, just throw that thing away." No, it's what I really use it for. And then, this is the best part, I ended up running the Huntington Beach half marathon for Augie's quest for ALS, right? They're finding research and cure for ALS, which is a crazy, scary disease. In the process of doing that, while I'm teaching, and I teach most of the days, like 8-hour days, I'm teaching and I'm on my feet, or I'm like sitting down writing stuff. I gave myself plantar fasciitis. I guess it happens when you become like a old guy. But because I wasn't putting my shoes on all the way, so I knew exactly what I did. I'm like, "Are you kidding me, dude?" And I'm supposed to run for this half marathon. I can't train for it because my foot's killing me, and I'm like, "It's probably gonna be worse because it's gonna mess up the way I'm running and my gait." So I'm like, "Dude, I'm just gonna not train for it. I'm gonna run it." And I realized, dude, I have that cold roller in my freezer. Oh wow, it was like the worst pain, but yet felt so good. And I'm so glad I didn't throw that thing away.
I know. The same thing. The thing sat in our freezer forever, and I ended up having a knee surgery, and that thing was like one of the absolute best things that I had to recover from that knee surgery, because you're constantly using ice and trying to manage that, and and that's when I pulled it out and realized the value of that. But yeah, it's funny. Sometimes you don't realize some of these therapeutical mobility things that we should be doing proactively. It's always not always, but those reactive points of you know, make you realize the importance of being proactive with it, you know. Once the injury comes, you're like, oh, hindsight, man, I wish I would have done that more, you know. That's why I asked. That's why I asked the question about your, you know, kind of fighting lifestyle to now, and some of the things that you know now, what you would offer yourself as a young fighter as advice. What are the top 3 things you would offer yourself?
Again, like from where I came from to where I've gone to where I'm going. If I could look back, and I have 0 regrets to anything I did. Wins, losses. I posted a picture today on my Instagram, and some guy, which he was funny because he retracted the comment, but I saw it pop up. He erased it. But hey, I'm gonna own a loss, dude.
Mm-hmm.
The guy was like, hey, bro, you got handled in that fight. And I thought it was kind of funny because I was like, well, hey, bro, to be honest with you, I lost the split decision, so didn't really get handled. However, I did go into that fight. I never told anybody this. I went in and I messed up the ligament in my left hand, trained for it. But I wanted to get paid. I'm a bitch, dude. So I'm gonna fight regardless if I got a hand or not. Like, I know I hit pretty hard with one of them.
Yeah.
So I wrote that in the thing. He erased his comment, but I saw it was still in my pen. So I wrote back to him. And it was like no disrespect. I was like, hey, bro. And then Dave, I want to get paid because we don't get paid when we fight. So I got paid. That guy got paid. He ended up winning, and that was like his biggest win career. Like I see you post all this shit about how he beat me. I'm like, that's cool, dude. He was tough. He wasn't a lay down.
Yeah.
He was ready to screw. So I'll own that shit. I don't care.
Yeah.
I always remember like winning fights and going, man, it was cool. And I never wanted to sit back and gloat on the fact, like, yeah, because I knew, you know what, one day that shit comes back full circle.
Yep.
Eventually, it has. But hey, I can look at my record and say I won more than I lost, and I had fun doing it, and I got me here. Here's a really good place. So regardless if we're in a pandemic or not,
Yeah.
it's a good place. I said, if I could get back to younger fighters, hey man, rest and recovery is so important. I was burning the candle at both ends. I was a guy who didn't have a dad to go, hey, get your head out of your ass. And I actually started making money, and I had a very, very low overhead. I didn't buy expensive cars. Towards the end, I started buying the next expensive jewelry like any other idiot would do. I was like, what? I bought a house, which was an investment. I still live in the house, which is cool. But I was going out partying. I was going to the Playboy Mansion with my homies. I was like, yeah! I was burning literally the candle at both ends, and I go practice, and people were like, man, you smell like vodka. I was like, yeah, I know. Okay, and I was like, put your stuff on. Okay. It sounds cool and it sounds funny, but at the end of the day, dude, that's not how you're getting better. And in the injuries that I got, which I could say probably because you're doing stupid shit like drinking,
Yep.
and not getting enough recovery and rest. So if I could look back, I wish I would have probably got a little bit more sleep, dialed my nutrition more, because I was always a really skinny kid. And then I started lifting heavy to make sure I could make the 55 weight class because I was shorter and smaller, and I was like, all right, I can get to that. But I had to bump up. I fought like 152 was the heaviest I fought in Muay Thai. So I had to bump up. I had to cut. I realized dudes are fighting at 155. They're cutting from like 190, 180. So I had to put on weight. I started lifting. I never did that before. I started lifting heavy. I started caloric surplus. And I think back now, there wasn't a weight class to really fight it. There was that light at the time. So
Yeah.
recovery, get with somebody who knows what they're doing. And I remember a guy who got me into some fights and said, Rob, you're bouncing all around. You got fights. Yeah, you're like, you're going to this guy, you're going to that guy, you're like a hooker. And I said, hey, Rob, I'm just picking some stuff up. I'm picking up coaching. Don't get all butthurt over it. And I'm still friends with that guy, and I still know I problem not. But I thought it was funny. I'll never forget that. He was kind of butthurt because I didn't just, you're my coach, and I'm going to hang out with you. I was like, no, dude, I want to learn boxing. I want to go train with boxers. And I want to learn Muay Thai. I'm going to go to Thailand. I train in Thailand, Utah. Hey, I'm going to train with kickboxer guys. Even though you spinning, flashing, weird stuff, maybe I'll get to catch somebody with that. So being humble enough to go and be a white belt on the mat when you're champion in Muay Thai, get your ass kicked by high school kids, that was embarrassing. Right? But in the back of my mind was like, well, if it was a real fighter, who's need you in the face. So being back and humbling yourself, which is what martial arts does.
Yeah.
And I love that. The best part about it, that's the only thing that, hey, I know I'm going to leave my legacy with my kids. Because, hey, this is how daddy paid the bills when there was a pandemic.
Yeah.
And, a lot of people weren't working. This is how I'm fucking making cash learning when I'm training, working out, and so it's kind of like therapy. So if I can give that back to my kids and back to people who are like, hey, I see value in that. I definitely want to buy into that.
Yeah.
I'm here online.
Yeah, I've recently started to focus a little more on my sleep. I've got this fancy ring thing. A friend gave this to me. It's called an Aura ring, and it tracks your body temperature, it tracks your movement, it tracks your heart rate. The body temperature one is the really interesting point. Especially with everything going on, it was interesting. I opened the app up the other day, and they're doing like studies on the COVID-19 and the potential of like some of the technology, like because it measures your body temperature as being a potential like pre-symptom, being able to recognize that your body's off because your body temperature is elevated and some of these things.
Degrees up.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy to think and look at what like technology is bringing to our industry now versus back then, and not to mention, to casually jump into fighting after being just a member in the gym and being able to pick it up is kind of an anomaly these days. Now fighters are starting at what young age, and they're doing MMA in their young years. You've got kids that, I coach kids that are wrestling, jiu-jitsu, and they're now picking up the boxing and the striking, and so I think they're developing some of those lifestyle habits at these younger ages now, where the fight era back then, I was right at the end of my collegiate career when everything was kind of popping off, and I fought in some tough man and some different fights back then, and I look even back then and how singular we were in our dimensions of fighting, and at the time most fighters were crazy, and wrestlers and stuff. You would, they still are, but there was a lot of crazy lifestyle balancing going on, and I think the healthier, holistic lifestyle is a little more in than it was back then, and we just have more knowledge now than what we did, and big part of it is because of the internet and moving information at a faster rate. Go back to your fighting days, and how much were you online? It just a little bit, but it wasn't like it is now, and the resources and the information you have out there, and you mentioned a really important thing along with the sleep is just the recovery factor, and knowing when you should be training and when you shouldn't. And I go back to that point I mentioned earlier, going full tilt every day isn't always the best idea, and learning how to balance that, and some of those lessons to younger fighters because they just want to go all in, or it just even martial artists, practitioners. I see it with Mr. 50-year-old white belt that rolls in and wants to jump in 7 days. Yeah, wants to roll hard every day, and
my shoulders hurt, my rib hurts. Right? You train every day? Yeah. When you did it, watch videos one day.
Yeah.
Drill one day, and then one day maybe once a week go live, not every day. Oh yeah, but it's like, dude.
Yeah, I think there's that the addictive piece for me, I know now, is getting humbled every single day and getting my ass kicked by my training partners puts me into a perspective that I enter the rest of my day knowing that there's not much else that's going to be worse than that dude sitting on my head, that I already had to deal with. So, I've really found that give back to me it makes me a better husband, father, leader, and, operator in what I do. So talk to me, we'll finish up a little bit with this. So anything in the future, we rolled just a little bit, but, man, your jiu-jitsu's solid for somebody that came up with more of a striking background, and your jiu-jitsu's tough. So any future aspirations, competing in grappling or anything like that?
To be totally honest, yeah. I'm a brown belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu through Alexander Nobes. At the end of the day, it was never something that I was like, yeah. Now mad respect for it. I love it. Being able to share that with my children, being able to share it with my students. It's a lot of fun. But I mean, hey, at the end of the day, you're gonna get in there. You're gonna wear a black belt one day. You better been on the mat with some other people. So to me, yeah, getting out there and competing is gonna be a fun piece of this. So hopefully it'll be sooner than later.
Yeah.
Trying to drill it solo is like.
I know.
Drilling with your students is like, well, yeah, you smoke your students, you better smoke your students.
Yeah.
Hey, they're your students,
Right.
so you can't go hard. So it's like, the teaching part of it, I really enjoyed. But yeah, definitely getting on the mat and doing some competitions.
Yeah.
That they've been throwing that around a little bit. Of, hey, man, you got 2 stripes on your brown belt. I'm like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff.
So gi, no, gi or no gi? That's the question.
You know what? I love both.
Yeah.
I love both.
Yeah.
The biggest, the game changer for me in my fight career was I came from obviously Muay Thai, kickboxing, and boxing, and then Tito Ortiz. We went to high school together. He was best man at my wedding. He was like, hey, bro, you want to get into MMA? I'll get you in UFC, dude. But you gotta wrestle. Take a year off of striking, just wrestle. And I was like, bro, seriously? Like, I'm a champ. I don't need that. This is me being kick-headed too.
Yeah.
Come on, seriously. And he goes, I'm telling you, dude. He's like, take a couple kick in the cage fights, get in there so you feel the difference. So I was a little stubborn at first, and thank God that I did that. I ended up going against Josh Thompson though, like the 3rd MMA fight, and the dude's got slick wrestling.
Yeah.
If you watch that fight, it's on Fight Fest. And if you watch that fight, he takes me down for 15 minutes. He got me a triangle, I escaped. However, I was spent after that. His elbows get in the face, and I remember for 15 minutes. I walked back to the corner at one point. My corner goes, hey, I'm going to throw this out. I was like, no, bro, no, I got this. He's like, he keeps taking you down. And I was like, I'm going to knock him out. And he's like, bro, I couldn't see out of one of my left eye. And I was like, I got this. And I had to end up staying I was in Vegas. I ended up staying in Vegas for an extra day or two because my face was so swollen. But that loss, that grappling, anti-grappling move, that I realized, hey, I have a huge, I was doing really well, and that was an awakening of, okay, I need to get better. So I got surrounded myself with grapplers, and I was like, all we're going to do is bad positions. Mount me, I'm going to escape. Take my back, I'm going to escape. I'm feeding you a single, I'm going to escape. Get in on a double deep, and then I'm going to try to, scramble out of this. So that was a really good learning lesson, and I thank God I was surrounded by guys who, hey, kick the shit out of me, and you did. Because they're like, hey, so then I was always like, hey, you want to spar after this? So give me the leg a little bit. But having that real feedback, where you need to wrestle first.
Yeah.
And then getting in there and being able to do that was a lot of fun. So the wrestling part, no gi, and almost was like a cheating because I had a little mixture. I always hit these Grammys on people. Like, what was that?
Hey, it ain't cheating. It ain't cheating.
Though, I mean, dude, there's so much to learn. I started training with the judo black belt. This guy Roos too, and he was such a stud, nicest guy, but a bad dude. He's from Turkey, and I just realized, wow, there's so many handles, so many trips and takedowns with the gi that I'm looking forward to doing it. It's been on my to-do list of like, hey, before I actually start throwing around the black belt, I want to make sure that I've gone out there and still go, all right, there was hand that dude black belt.
Yeah.
He earned it. So that's definitely going to be trying to do.
Chael Sonnen's got his Submission Underground SUG, and they're on UFC Fight Pass, and he's always bringing in former fighters against grapplers, and that would be a really interesting one to see you on, and I'd love to have you up here, and maybe we hang out up here in Oregon at some point. So
Dude, that'd be cool. That'd be cool.
Yeah.
I saw that. Was it what they call it, quintuplet digging?
Yeah, the quintet. Yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah. I saw that and I was like, so I started sending messages. I was like, hey, do they pay for that too? And some guys were like, yeah, it's not a lot, but it's enough. I was like, whoa, I'm a fan of money.
Yeah, right.
I like to have a reason to train, so stuff like that, dude.
I do jiu-jitsu for free now,
Let me check my schedule. No,
yeah, right. I know, I think everybody had all of these competition aspirations or whatever this year, and I definitely had some of my own, and planned on doing Masters Worlds and a couple of the others this year, and obviously that's all kind of wiped away, and it's going to be interesting to see how we even come back from a lot of this. I don't want to dive too much deeper into this. We're coming down to the end of the call, but real quick, I mean, how do you see coming back to think of jiu-jitsu and that? What do you see, and now that you've had a little bit of time to think about this, how do you see us coming back from this and, close contact in martial arts?
Yeah, I heard that in California, May 15th, I believe they're doing it in phases, that gyms will be open in the first phase.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't know the whole how the parameters going to be, do you have to be apart, 6 feet apart from each other, you have to wear a mask.
Right.
I don't know, because that can kind of challenge doing jiu-jitsu. But hey, dude, let's turn lemons into lemonade. Let's get really strong. Let's build our frame.
Yeah.
Let's build the vehicle. So, and let's watch a bunch of videos. People are putting out free content right now, like you just said to you.
Yeah.
Pick up some stuff, because I know I've been on the mat before. His kid caught me, and he's like, I saw that on YouTube. Oh my god. And I was like, but hey, dude, if you can pick up some stuff, pick up some stuff. So I think it's going to be interesting, but it was really cool that they did recognize that fitness is it's essential, right? You've got to be physically fit. Not only the physical fitness part for your health, but the well-being, right? There's 7 pieces of wellness: physically fit, your nutrition, what's going on in here, career-wise. Some people are not going to be able to recover from this, and that's really upsetting. But hey, let's pivot.
Yeah.
Let's realize, okay, maybe it wasn't the job that you needed. Maybe you need to go and do something else. Maybe it's an opportunity. Let's not look at it like, oh god, this sucks.
Yeah.
Let's look at it like, hey, I'm stuck inside. Yeah, well, dude, how many push-ups can you do?
Yeah, right.
I'm doing that to my kids. I'm like, how many pull-ups? Let's do 100 pulls a day.
Yeah,
I
right.
can't do that. I'm like, I can't in sets of 5. It's like, yeah, I can. It's like, gotcha.
Yeah. Awesome.
I mean,
Yeah, it's that's the real question. I saw the same stuff yesterday. Phase 1 gyms coming back. There are some different details in there as far as when we can come back, which is once the numbers start declining. But there's a lot of gray in how the gyms kind of can reopen. They talk about real extreme levels of sanitation and protocols, and who knows what that's going to look like and how we come back. But the gyms that I think are more mixed modality and have the ability to navigate and turn into more fitness orientation and some of these other pieces are going to help them level out and get back into it. But I'm really concerned for a lot of my friends and strict martial arts and jiu-jitsu schools trying to come back and what that looks like. So it's definitely something worth discussing.
Hey, last but not least, I don't want people that have a gym that might be watching this and go, oh god, that guy just said that. At the end of the day, I want you to think about this. Small group training is going to blow up, because check it out. I can work out with my family, and we're all in the same house. I can work out with my friends. Yep. It's like, what have you guys been doing? You super bored? Me too. Hey, I got a coach. He wants us to make some money because everybody needs to make a little bit of money. Let the 4 of us go train together, and we're going to break them off. So it's going to be a little bit less for us, but he's going to get paid more than just doing a class. And I know that you're not popping on me. So I think small group training in an environment where, obviously it's been sanitized. And to me, I think it's kind of funny because I'm like, hold on, we're telling everybody to wash their hands. What were they doing before?
Yeah, exactly. Now that we're all...
Dude, stop eating bats, come on.
Yeah. Now that we're focused on hygiene, right? You should have been all along,
Yeah, right.
Yeah, great points, and that's why I asked that question, because I want to ask another professional that has stayed afloat through the years and as you've navigated your way around the industry, and I see the same thing. I actually see opportunity in this. I think the way the class structures were run before are going to change, but I think there's a lot of opportunity in the small groups and the private training moving forward. So I think that's where the opportunities lie. So listen, coaches out there, if you don't have your personal training, you need to go focus on that, develop yourself. and start regrouping and focusing on smaller groups, maybe opening up that schedule versus just 2 classes a day, opening up your schedule to 4 classes a day, or and maybe some privates in between there, and those classes going to smaller groups, so that you can control that. I think that's really important to discuss, but really appreciate you taking the time here today. We've been on for an hour now. We've got a lot of information here, so I know we could just go on forever. So, again, really appreciate you.
We'll have to do another one. Bro.
Yeah, let's definitely do a part 2, because I think we could continue this conversation for a couple more hours, and at some point we'll do it over a beer down the road. But again, once again, appreciate Razor Rob, everyone. Tune in for our next couple. Really excited. Once again, we'll get Rob back on for another episode. And, appreciate you. Good luck with everything. Stay healthy. And,
Thanks, brother. You too, man.
yeah, let's keep in touch. Take care, Rob.
Michelle, thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Later, bro. Appreciate you, man.
Later, bro.
Boom!